I wasn't supposed to hear it. But the moment my daughter forgot to hang up the phone, my life changed. Her voice, my own child, cut through the static like a knife. "It's time, Mark," she told her husband. "Dad can't live alone anymore. He's a burden." I was frozen in my chair, the warmth from my coffee fading fast. "You know the market in Austin," her husband replied, his tone casual, like they were discussing weather. "The house is worth at least $760,000 now. We could sell it, get him into a decent care facility, and still have enough for a down payment on the lake house we want." I heard my daughter laugh. Laugh. Exactly. The longer we wait, the more forgetful he'll get. Might as well make the move now while he still trusts us. The phone slipped from my fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor I'd installed with my own hands 15 years ago. Every board, every nail, placed for the family I thought I could trust. I sat there, staring at the photo of my late wife, Linda, on the mantel. Her eyes seemed to hold a question I couldn't answer. Was it disappointment? Warning? Or just the quiet understanding of someone who already knew how cruel the living could be? The ticking of the old wall clock filled the silence, each second pulling me further away from the man I'd been 5 minutes ago. The man who believed his daughter loved him without condition. I looked around the living room. The walnut coffee table I'd built in the garage. The reading chair Linda used every night. The handmade curtains she'd sewn herself. They didn't see memories. They saw market value. A cold heaviness settled in my chest. I wasn't dead yet. And I sure as hell wasn't helpless. I pulled open the kitchen drawer where I kept old records and found the folder instantly. Linda always said you never throw away important papers. University tuition bills, $42,000 over 4 years. Wedding expenses, $28,000. Car loan documents I'd co-signed when my daughter's credit was shot. Every page was proof. Proof of sacrifices they'd forgotten. Or maybe just decided didn't matter anymore. I remembered the winter I worked double shifts repairing power lines during ice storms so she could finish college without debt. Linda would have hot soup waiting when I came home half frozen. She'd rub my shoulders and whisper, "Don't give her so much that she forgets to be grateful." I hadn't listened. I walked upstairs to the bedroom Linda and I had shared. Her jewelry box was still on the dresser. Her favorite novel, open to page 198, waited on the nightstand like she might return to finish it. I pulled out our original house deed, no cosigners, no liens. My name alone. And in that moment, a thought began to form. Not the kind of thought you share with anyone. The kind you keep quiet until it's time to act. The next morning, I walked into the office of a real estate attorney named Daniel Carter. He remembered meeting Linda years earlier when we'd updated our wills. I told him everything, what I'd overheard, what they were planning. He listened without interruption, then leaned back in his chair. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "legally, your daughter and son-in-law have no claim to your home. None. If you want to sell it, you could do it tomorrow. Tomorrow." I rolled the word around in my mind like a secret. "How fast could it happen?" I asked. "With the right buyer?" "A week, maybe less," Daniel replied. I left his office with my hands steady and my mind clear. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to end this on my terms. That night, I sat by the front window, watching the streetlights flicker on one by one. Somewhere, my daughter was smiling, thinking her plan was unfolding perfectly. She had no idea her old man was about to become the sharpest problem she'd ever faced. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt since before Linda got sick. It was a quiet kind of resolve, the kind that doesn't need shouting or threats. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before I typed, "Top real estate agents in Austin, fastest sales." One name kept appearing, Rebecca Moore. Her client reviews read like love letters, sold in 5 days, cash offer, smooth process. Her photo showed a confident woman in her late 30s with the kind of direct gaze that told me she didn't waste time. I called the number listed under her profile. "Rebecca Moore," she answered, brisk and professional. "Ms. Moore, my name is Martin Thompson. I'm looking to sell my house quickly. How fast can that happen?" Her tone shifted, like she'd just smelled an opportunity. That depends on the property and the condition. Tell me about it. I gave her the basics. 2 stories, 3,200 square feet, original owner, custom features throughout, located in an older but desirable neighborhood near Barton Creek. That's exactly the kind of listing my buyers love, she said. How soon can I see it? Today. This afternoon. Perfect. 2 o'clock. I'll bring my photographer. I spent the next few hours cleaning like a man possessed. Not because I cared about how it looked for me, but because I knew every polished surface, every perfect angle, would raise its value and shorten my timeline. At exactly 2, Rebecca pulled into my driveway in a black SUV, stepped out in heels that could probably crush glass, and walked up with a folder under her arm. The moment she stepped inside, she froze in the entryway. "Mr. Thompson, this is gorgeous." She ran her hand along the oak banister I'd built with Linda. "These floors original?" "Installed them myself in '09, I said. Her photographer started snapping pictures. They sound like a camera at a wedding. "This kitchen," she said, stopping at the granite island. "It's exactly what buyers in this area are paying top dollar for. You kept it in immaculate shape." Linda picked the stone, I said, unable to hide the pride in my voice. Said the flecks reminded her of sunlight. Rebecca smiled faintly, then turned businesslike again. "Let me show you some comparables," she said, pulling up listings on her tablet. Similar homes, none as well kept as mine, were going for between $720,000 and $790,000. Yours? I'm confident we can list at $755,000 and get immediate interest. And I already have investors who could pay cash. That number hung in the air. I could picture my daughter's face if she ever heard it, and then the moment she realized she'd get none of it. How fast could a cash buyer close? 10 days, sometimes less, Rebecca said. But we need to list right away. Is that what you want? I thought about my daughter's voice calling me a burden. About my son-in-law reducing my life to an asset to be liquidated. Yes, I said. That's exactly what I want. By the time Rebecca left an hour later, the listing contract was signed. The photos would be live by evening. I made myself dinner, roast chicken and rice, nothing fancy, and ate by the bay window Linda had always loved. It was strange, looking at the garden knowing it wouldn't be mine for long. But there was no grief in it, only anticipation. 2 days later, Rebecca called. "Martin, I have an offer. Cash. Full asking price, $755,000. Closing in 9 days. She didn't even need to finish. Accept it. The paperwork moved fast after that. Inspections, title search, signatures, everything in motion while my daughter and son-in-law were still in Santa Fe at some marketing expo. The more the process accelerated, the calmer I felt. It was like being back on a construction site when you could see the project taking shape exactly as planned. On the 6th day, Rebecca confirmed the closing date. Funds will be wired directly to your account on Tuesday morning. You'll have full access immediately. That night, I drove to a small apartment complex on the north side of the city. 1 bedroom, furnished, month-to-month lease. Nothing fancy, but clean and private. The property manager, Mrs. Alvarez, showed me the unit. Quiet tenants, mostly retirees. "You'd fit right in," she said. I signed the lease on the spot, paying first month and deposit in cash. She handed me 2 keys, my new home in a place my daughter would never think to look. On the drive back, I stopped at a 24-hour locksmith. The man behind the counter looked up from his register. "Emergency change out?" "Something like that," I said. "How soon?" "Tomorrow morning. All exterior doors." When I pulled into my driveway that night, I looked at the house differently. Not as a home, not as a prison, but as a trap one I was setting just for them. The next morning, the locksmith arrived in a white van and got to work. The old brass locks came out. New steel ones went in, cold and unyielding. The sound of each lock clicking into place felt like hammering the final nails into the coffin of their plans. When he was done, I had 3 shiny keys. They had none. I stood in the living room after he left, looking around one last time. The air was still, like the house knew something was about to happen. In less than a week, they'd be home. And in less than a minute, They'd realized their future had just been locked away from them. Tuesday came dressed like a normal day and walked me straight into a different life. Rebecca met me at the title office, a low brick building in South Austin, where people quietly changed the shape of their futures with pens and handshakes. The buyer's attorney was early, the notary had coffee ready, and the conference room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fresh paper. I took a seat at the end of the table and placed my palms flat, like I used to before a final inspection on a job site. No tremor, no hesitation. "Mr. Thompson," Rebecca said, sliding a packet toward me. "This is the settlement statement. Purchase price $755, closing costs itemized here. Wire instructions already verified by your bank." My bank. I'd opened a new account 2 days earlier at Lone Star Community Bank, a small outfit that still answered phones with real people. The manager, a patient man named Evan Rhodes, had looked me in the eye and said, "We'll move at your pace, sir." I'd liked that. Today, though, my pace was quick. Initial. Sign. Date. I moved through the stack with the calm of a man tightening the last bolts on a steel frame. The notary slid the final page toward me, deed of trust, released, and clicked her stamp. "Congratulations," Rebecca said softly. "Funds will hit in about 20 minutes. I nodded, but I didn't smile until my phone buzzed. Incoming wire confirmed. The number on the screen didn't look real. It looked like a dare fulfilled. I thanked everyone, shook hands, and stepped into the sunlight a lighter man than the one who'd walked in. I didn't drive straight back to the house. Instead, I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance along the Oak Line Street, listening to Austin hum, bikes on the lane, a delivery truck idling, wind catching a neighbor's flag. It was all familiar and brand new at once. Inside, the rooms were bright with a late morning light. The bay window cheered like it always did around noon. The kitchen counters threw back a warm, friendly shine. I leaned a hip against the island Linda had loved and let the truth settle. The house wasn't mine anymore. But the next 30 hours still belonged to me. I took out the small cardboard box I'd picked up the night before, a mini Wi-Fi camera disguised as a wall charger. I read the manual twice, then plugged the device into an outlet in the entryway and angled it to frame the front door, the foyer, and a slice of the living room. Perfect. I linked it to my phone and tested the motion alerts. On the screen, I watched myself step in and out of frame, a gray-haired man in a navy shirt who suddenly looked like he had plans again. Then I sat at the kitchen table and began to write. Not an angry letter. Anger burns fast and cheap. This needed to be clean. Final. An engineer's note. Spare, exact, undeniable. Ava and Mark, I heard your conversation last week after the call. You called me a burden. You discussed selling my house. I sold it myself. Closed this morning for $755,000. I've moved somewhere that fits the life I'm still living. Your personal belongings from the guest room and garage are in storage at North Loop Depot, Unit 214. There's a month paid in advance. You have no claim to this property. Do not enter again without the new owner's permission. Take care of yourselves. You'll need it. I wrote it 3 times to get the weight right, signed the last copy, and slid it into a plain white envelope. I taped it at eye level on the inside of the front door. The camera saw it perfectly. Next, logistics. I made 2 calls while water boiled for coffee. The first was to North Loop Depot, where a polite woman named Cheryl arranged a mid-afternoon drop-off. We'll put everything in 214 and lock it. You can leave the key at the desk for your authorized contacts, she said. I gave her Ava's full name. The second call went to a small moving company I'd used once for Linda's piano. The owner remembered me by my voice. You always labeled your boxes like a machine, he said. When and where? Today. Guest room contents and the garage shelves labeled personal. Address on email. Deliver to North Loop Depot. He whistled. Tight turnaround, but I've got 2 guys free after lunch. By 2 o'clock, boxes were stacked by the foyer like quiet soldiers. I watched the movers wheel away the last crate with Ava's winter coats and Mark's golf clubs, the clubs he'd laughed about keeping in my garage because his leased apartment's storage closet was too cramped. The truck door slid down with a neat metallic shutter. The sound rippled through the house like a decision made. While they drove to the storage facility, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out the two things I hadn't been able to decide about: Linda's recipe box and the old camcorder case. I took both. The camcorder batteries were long dead, but the tapes were time itself. The recipe cards smelled faintly of vanilla. At 4, Cheryl texted, "Delivered. Unit 214 locked. 1 month credit applied." I walked room to room and made the smallest goodbyes a man can make. My hand on the doorframe where we'd marked Ava's height in pencil, 3 lines still faint beneath a coat of paint. The bookcase where Linda kept the garden journals. The bedroom where the air still knew our names. I left the house clean and quiet and stepped onto the front porch. The sky had that pale, high blue that always arrives before a Texas dusk. I locked the new locks, pocketed the keys, and drove north to my apartment. It should have felt like downsizing. It felt like sizing right. In Unit 3B, I placed the recipe box on the kitchenette shelf and propped the camcorder case under the small TV stand. I laid Linda's photo on the dresser, then hung my only sport coat, the charcoal one, on the closet hook. I sat on the edge of the bed and called Evan at the bank. "The wire arrived," I said. "Can we set up an account with a limited debit limit and 2-factor on everything? Alerts for any attempt over 1,000. "Already anticipated," he replied. "I built your profile with those flags. We can add a second savings with no online access if you like. Do it." After dinner, a sandwich, a bowl of soup, the kind of meal Linda would have scolded me for. I opened the camera app. My old foyer appeared on the screen like a stage waiting on actors. The motion indicator rested at 0. The note, a small white rectangle, held its position under the door glass. They were due back tomorrow, late afternoon. Ava always wanted to beat the toll road traffic. I knew their habits, their shortcuts, the songs they played too loudly with the windows cracked. I slept deeply for the first time in a week. The next morning, I made coffee in the quiet and took a walk around the block. The live oaks were holding on to last year's leaves the way stubborn people hold on to bad ideas. Back upstairs, I checked the app, still nothing. I set the phone on the table, opened Linda's recipe box, and found the pecan pie card in her fine, looping hand. "Blind bake for 10. Don't skip the salt." I read it twice and smiled because it sounded like her talking. At noon, Evan called. "Your second account is funded and isolated. I'll courier your cashier's checkbook later this week." "Thank you," I said. 2 silos. 1 for living. 1 untouchable. At 1:30, Rebecca texted to confirm that the buyer's team would do their final walkthrough tomorrow morning, keys to exchange at 9. Timing lined up like chalk marks on a foundation. At 3:40, I set my phone on the table, camera feed full screen, and ate dinner early in case my stomach turned later. I cleaned the dish, wiped the counter, and stood there with the muscle memory of a man waiting on a storm. At 4:58 p.m., my phone chirped, motion detected, front entry. The screen woke. A shadow crossed the sidelight glass, followed by the chrome flash of an SUV door. Ava stepped into frame first, sunglasses on her head, travel tote on her shoulder, heels too thin for the walkway cracks I never got around to sealing. She looked exactly like the kid who once ran this path barefoot, only now she checked her reflection in the door glass before she reached for the handle. Mark rolled a suitcase behind her. His smile was the easy kind that used to fool me. Not today. Ava pushed the key in. Turned. Stopped. Tried again, harder. I could hear the faint metallic refusal through my speakers. Her head tilted. The third try turned her mouth into a thin line. Mark set the suitcase upright and tried his key at the deadbolt, as if a different wrist angle could change the math. Nothing. He pressed the doorbell. The sound didn't reach me. The house was empty. The note waited. Ava pulled her phone from her tote. She hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, then put it back. She was calculating, I could tell, the way she'd calculated tuition and wedding budgets and holiday plans on my dime, and once she had a number she liked, she'd act. But nothing adds up when the variables are gone. Mark stepped back, scanning the eaves and the garage keypad. He tapped a code. The red light stayed red. Then Ava saw the envelope. White. Centered. Her name printed in my steady hand. She reached up and peeled it from the glass. My phone buzzed twice, the camera registering the movement like a heartbeat. On my tiny screen, my daughter slid her finger under the seal and opened the letter I'd written at my kitchen table with Linda's pen. She began to read, and as the porch light clicked on timed, automatic, precise, I realized something I hadn't expected to feel in this moment. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Ava read the first line with her chin high. By the third, her mouth opened. By the last, her shoulders dropped as if the porch itself had pressed down on her. Mark took the paper from her and read twice, slower the second time. He glanced at the lock, then at the little camera lens disguised as a charger he didn't notice. I watched them both from my kitchen table in Unit 3B, the screen bright in the dim apartment, my hands steady around a cup of coffee I didn't need. Ava spoke first. He sold it. Mark's jaw worked. He can't do that. He did. She tapped the number with her fingernail. 755. They stood there without moving for a full 10 seconds, as if stillness could rewind the last week. Then the talking started soft at first, then layered, then sharp. Call him, Mark said. Ava pulled out her phone. It rang on my end. I watched the word Ava glow on the screen of my old cell, the one I'd kept but muted. Once, twice, 3 times. I let it pass, then silenced it. She tried again, then again. The camera app kept working under the calls, the picture unwavering, my daughter pacing the porch, Mark staring through the glass at the living room where we'd once stacked holiday gifts. On the 4th attempt, I answered. Dad. Her voice jumped at the sound of me. What is this? What are you doing? Following the plan, I said, calm as a level on a new beam. My plan. The house is sold. Your things are at North Loop Depot, Unit 214. Bill asked for your ID. You can't just. We had talked about finding you a place with care or resort, somewhere safe. You and Mark talked about selling my home and putting me in a facility, I said. I heard every word. Silence. The kind that makes truth ring. Mark took the phone. Martin, this is irresponsible. We were trying to help. A rash sale at your age, without input. This looks like exploitation. Someone could claim elder abuse. That someone isn't me, I said. The sale is clean. I have counsel. And competence letters if I need them. I didn't yet, but I would. Before I hung up, I added, Ava, there's a month paid on the storage unit. After that, it's your responsibility. Where are you? She asked, voice small. Dad, please. We just need to talk. We're talking, I said, and ended the call. I sat there a long moment, listening to the whisper of the apartment's ASC and my own measured breathing. Then I did what I had promised myself I'd do the minute they said the word burden. I built a wall they couldn't climb. First, I called Daniel Carter and left a message flagging the confrontation. Then I dialed Lone Star Community Bank and spoke to Evan. Lock my profile, I said. No changes by phone. Branch-only updates with 2 IDs. Add a note. No third-party inquiries. If anyone calls about me, you route it to me or to Daniel Carter. Already set. Mr. Thompson, he said. Do you want credit freezes? Yes. He walked me through the online forms for all 3 bureaus. 10 minutes later, my credit file went quiet as a closed book. Next, I purchased a P.O. box at the Postal Center on Lamar and submitted a change of address online. Bills, statements, even the old hardware catalog I still liked to thumb through. Everything would go there. I added spam filters on my email and turned off location sharing on the phone my daughter once set up to help. Back at the apartment, I called North Loop Depot and asked Cheryl to add a note. Only Ava Thompson may retrieve items from Unit 214. No access for Mark without her present. Understood, she said, professional and kind in a way that made my chest ease. At 5:30, the camera pinged again. Ava and Mark were inside now. I'd left the side window latch loose for airflow while I packed. Apparently, Mark remembered the trick I'd shown him during a summer storm. He lifted the sash. Ava squeezed through in her good shoes. Inside my old entryway, they looked small. They walked to the mantel as if the photo of Linda might explain something the letter hadn't. Then they went room to room, opening drawers that were empty, closets that held only air and paint and the faint ghost of my cologne. Ava reached for the hallway where we'd marked her height and paused, head bowed, palm against the frame, as if she could feel the pencil lines through the paint. Mark found the listing packet Rebecca had left for the buyer's walkthrough, the inventory sheet, the closing checklist, a clean map of the next morning. He read every line and set it down like it might burn through the table. The phone rang again. I didn't answer. He tried from his phone, then from another number, then texted, "This isn't final. Call me." I set the phone face down and watched the picture on the other screen instead. At dusk, they left. The porch light clicked on at 7, as it had for years. The camera switched to night mode, the image turning silver and quiet. I made eggs and toast in a pan that didn't remember us and ate standing up. Then I washed the dish, dried it, put it away. The old habits calmed me. Finish the task, stow the tool, check the line twice. Daniel called back at 8. I put him on speaker and went over everything: the overheard call, the sale, the note, the entry through the window. "Good," he said when I finished. "Here's what we add tomorrow. 1. A notarized affidavit of capacity from your primary doctor. I'll email you a template. 2. A do not trespass letter we deliver to Ava and Mark by certified mail. 3. If they show up again tonight, we call non-emergency and ask for a civil standby in the morning during the buyer's walkthrough. That keeps things clean." "Understood," I said. "And Martin," he added, voice softer, "you're doing fine. Boundary is not cruelty. It's structure." After we hung up, I ironed the charcoal sport coat for morning. I laid out a blue shirt Linda always said made me look less tired. I set 2 pens by the door. At 10:15, I took one more pass through the checklist in my head: funds in 2 accounts, address change complete, credit frozen, counsel engaged, camera armed, keys ready for the 9 a.m. exchange. I silenced my phone, set it face up on the nightstand for alerts, and stretched out on the bed. Sleep came quick, like a good door falling into a true frame. At 12:41 a.m., my phone vibrated against the tabletop with a small, urgent sound. I sat up before I opened my eyes. The alert was already there. Motion detected, front entry. The image bloomed in white and graphite. 2 shapes, hooded sweatshirts. Not the clothes from earlier. Mark's height, Ava's messy bun hidden in the hood. Mark carried something that caught the porch light, a slim steel bar wrapped in tape. They moved like people who'd decided the rules applied to everyone else. Ava tried the knob once, twice, harder. Mark leaned into the deadbolt with his shoulder, testing, like he was checking a stubborn door on a rental. Then he crouched and slid the bar toward the latch. I stood, already dialing. On the second ring, a calm voice: "Austin Police, what's the location of your emergency?" I gave the address with the clarity of a man reading coordinates. "This is a vacant property I sold today. 2 individuals I know, my daughter and her husband, are attempting to force entry. I have live video. I have their names. I have a sale packet showing I'm the former owner and that the key handoff is scheduled for 9 a.m. I need a unit to document a trespass. Are they inside now?" the operator asked. On the screen, the bar bit under the latch. The door flexed. Ava glanced over her shoulder, eyes wide even in the gray filter, as if she could feel me watching from miles away. "They're about to be," I said, voice even. "Stay on the line with me," the operator said. "Officers are on the way." Mark shifted his grip and set his shoulder for another push. The door began to give. The door flexed again under Mark's shoulder, the frame holding because I'd installed it myself with 3-inch screws sunk deep into solid oak. On my screen, the grain around the deadbolt looked exactly as it had the day I stained it, back when this door was the first thing Linda saw coming home from work. The dispatcher's voice stayed steady. "Sir, can you confirm neither of you is on the property? I'm in my apartment. They're at my former address. The buyer takes possession at 9 a.m. I have video proof they're forcing entry." A second voice came faintly through her headset, then she relayed, 2 patrol units en route. ETA 4 minutes. "Stay with me." Mark straightened, muttering something to Ava I couldn't hear. She paced in a tight circle, glancing toward the street. They both froze when headlights swept across the porch. My camera switched to full light mode as a cruiser rolled to the curb, its spotlight washing over them like a stage cue. One officer stepped out tall and broad, hand on his belt. The other came from the passenger side with a flashlight beam trained on the doorframe. "Evening," the tall one said. "Mind telling us why you're trying to open this house?" "It's my father's," Ava started, voice pitching high. "We have keys. Well, we had keys. It's not your father's anymore," the shorter officer said, reading from something in his hand. "Dispatch says this property closed today. Owner provided documentation. You're listed as non-residents." Mark bristled. "This is a misunderstanding." "My father-in-law, your former father-in-law," the tall one cut in. "He's made it clear through legal channels that you're not to enter." I heard the words even before they came. "We just need to grab a few things." The flashlight caught the steel bar in Mark's hand. "That how you grab things?" the officer asked. "Drop it." Mark obeyed, metal clanging against the porch. Ava's face crumpled, part fear, part fury. "Here's how this works," the shorter officer said, firm but measured. "You leave now, no further contact tonight, and the new owner decides whether to press charges for attempted entry. Or," he let the alternative hang in the air. Ava glanced toward the cruiser, where the back seat door stood open like a silent dare. "Fine," she said finally, and turned toward the walkway. Mark hesitated, eyes still on the door, before following. The officers watched them to the curb, waited until the SUV's taillights disappeared, then shone their flashlights along the porch. One leaned close to the door and shook his head. "Solid work." That frame didn't move an inch. I allowed myself the smallest smile. "I built it to last," I told the dispatcher. "Officers will document and notify the property's new owner," she said. "Do you want a case number?" "Yes," I said, writing it down on the pad by my phone. A record. A line in the sand. When the screen finally went dark again, the apartment felt too quiet. I set my phone on the counter and poured a glass of water, letting the cold run steady over my hand. Linda used to say water was the only thing that cleared her head after an argument. By morning, I had slept just enough to keep my hands steady. I dressed in the blue shirt and charcoal coat I'd laid out, ate a plain breakfast, and drove to the title office for the 9 o'clock key exchange. The buyers, a couple in their 40s, friendly but cautious, arrived with their agent. We shook hands, and I handed over the 3 new keys, the garage remote, and a folder with appliance manuals I'd found in the pantry. "House is all yours," I said. "She's solid. Treat her well." They promised they would. I walked back to my truck, lighter than I'd been in years. The deal was done. Possession had passed. And Ava and Mark? They no longer had a door to force. By the time I reached my apartment, Evan from the bank had left a message. All security measures in place. Accounts verified. No suspicious activity. I called Daniel Carter next. "It's over," I said. "It's begun," he corrected. "Now you hold your ground." Hold my ground. The words fit. That evening, I opened Linda's recipe box again and kicked out her chicken pot pie card. It was work for one pair of hands, but the smell filling my small kitchen was the same as the old house, home on my terms. Just before sunset, my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I let it ring. Then another buzz, a voicemail. I didn't play it. Not yet. Instead, I stepped onto my small balcony and watched the city lights come on. Somewhere out there, Ava and Mark were realizing the storage unit was all they had left. Somewhere, they were arguing over who had pushed too far. And here I was, free, with my own roof overhead and $750,000 locked tight in my accounts. Tomorrow, I'd start deciding what came next. But tonight, I stood in the warm breeze, knowing the first and hardest part was done. I'd taken back my life, and they'd never see it coming when I decided the next move. 2 days passed in quiet. Too quiet. The camera feed from the old house stayed blank, no motion alerts, no flickers of movement, until the morning of the 3rd day. At 8:12 a.m., the screen lit up with a figure at the porch. Not Ava. Not Mark. The new owner. He bent to pick up an envelope from the doormat, glanced inside, then looked straight into the lens as if he knew I was watching. He sent me a text a few minutes later. "Someone left this in the night. Thought you should see it." It was my own letter. The one I'd taped to the door. but someone had scrawled across it in thick black marker, "You took what's yours. This isn't over." I called Daniel Carter immediately. "Document it," he said, "and I'll draft a no-contact order. If they keep pushing, we'll have grounds for harassment." By noon, the buyer had installed his own security system. I returned the camera charger to its box and stored it in my apartment closet. I didn't need eyes on that house anymore. That chapter was sealed. At 3, my phone rang. This time, the caller ID was clear, Ava. I answered on the second ring. "Dad, please. We didn't mean for things to get this far." Her voice was thin, not the confident edge she'd had on the porch that night. "Mark's looking for work. We're between places right now. Could we at least meet for coffee? Just to talk." "Coffee doesn't change the past," I said. "And the past is what got us here. We're family." The word hung in the air, heavy and hollow. "Family doesn't plan your removal like a business transaction," I replied. "You crossed a line you can't uncross. My life is mine now." She didn't argue. She just exhaled into the phone, a long, tired sound, then hung up. That night, I sat at my small kitchen table with Linda's recipe box and a blank card. On it, in my neat block letters, I wrote, "Freedom is a choice." And I chose it. I tucked the card behind her pecan pie recipe, knowing I'd see it every time I reached for something familiar. The next morning, Evan from Lone Star Community Bank called. "Your accounts are in order, Mr. Thompson. No unusual activity. But I thought you'd like to know, we received a call from a woman asking to verify beneficiary details. Gave the name Ava Thompson. We told her no such information is available and noted the attempt." I thanked him. That was the last confirmation I needed. They weren't done trying, but they were done winning. Over the next week, I set up a trust in my name, with instructions that upon my death, every cent would go to a scholarship fund for students in electrical engineering, the field that had given me a career and a life worth building. Not $1 would pass to Ava or Mark. When Daniel filed the no-contact order, he asked if I wanted to include a formal statement. I did. Just one sentence. My daughter and her husband ceased being part of my life when they made me a burden in theirs. A month later, I was walking to my usual coffee spot when I saw them across the street, outside a run-down apartment complex. Ava was carrying a laundry basket. Mark was on the phone, pacing with the restless energy of someone who couldn't find purchase anywhere. They didn't see me, and I didn't cross the street. At the cafe, Sarah the barista remembered my order and asked how the downsizing was going. I smiled and told her it was better than I ever imagined. That evening, on my balcony, I watched the sun sink behind the city skyline. My apartment was still modest, still simple, but it was mine. Every key, every bill, every choice. No one could take it from me. I lifted a glass of iced tea toward the horizon, as if Linda might see it from wherever she was. "It's done, love," I said aloud. "They can't touch me now." Somewhere across Austin, my daughter was learning the hardest truth I could give her. When you treat someone as a burden, you risk losing them entirely. And me? I'd been lost for a while. But now I was found in my own space, on my own terms, and with the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'd won without ever raising my voice.